Hi, everyone. I hope you're hanging in there. I find that this time of year, I get a little less energized to be very consistent with my teaching, and I tend to get a little less patience with my kids a little bit more. So I'm hoping you're better than I am. These are the long days of winter homeschooling. To help you push through these days and weeks, make sure you find some fun things to do. Remember, your kids are probably going through the same emotional tiredness of going through these months of schooling. So you need to provide some form of a break to the daily doldrums, if you will. One idea might be to go on an educational field trip. You can have maybe a pajama day if you're not already doing homeschooling in pajamas. Set a goal to accomplish something and then celebrate that accomplishment by going to a special restaurant or getting a dessert in the middle of the day. Consider doing school in a different location. If it's warm where you are, go to a park and do school one day a week. If you live in a place like I do, where the weather is not as nice, then maybe consider doing school in another room. Find something to change things up to inspire learning during these next few months. Well, today we're going to look at lessons 69 through 72 in Right Start Math Level C. So let's get started. This week, you're going to need the lessons manual, the student worksheet book, the math card games manual and the game cards, the drawing board, the T-square, the 30-60 triangle. You'll need the fraction chart and the fraction pieces. You're also going to need crayons or colored pencils and extra paper. Those items are not included in your Right Start Math materials. You will need the 4-in-1 ruler and the colored tiles. This week, your child is going to continue to learn about geometry. They'll learn more about fractions and will use measurements to apply what they're learning about fractions. Let's get started by turning to lesson 69. This lesson will continue to work on the sixths. You will need crayons for this lesson, which are not provided in the Right Start Math materials. The first paragraph of the warm-up is going to review centimeters. Now, if your child needs more review, you can go ahead and take a look at lesson 68 where centimeters were covered. The second paragraph of the warm-up will review shapes and geometry terminology. And then the third paragraph will review fractions. Take a look at the section called fraction charts. Now, this is the first lesson in which your child is going to be using the fraction pieces and the chart. Now, if you've purchased the Right Start Math math set, you will have received two fraction charts. One is the solid fraction chart, and the other one is designed to be broken into pieces. So you will be given these little, the fraction chart, and then you will just snap each of the pieces apart. In this section of the lesson, give your child the fraction pieces for them to build the fraction chart. Your child can use the full fraction chart as a reference if needed. Take a look at the section called Comparing Fractions. In this section, you're going to ask your child questions and have them evaluate the fraction chart that they built and learn more about fractions and comparing them. The first three questions is asking how many thirds are needed to make a whole, how many sixths are needed to make a whole, and then how many halves are made to whole. How many halves equal a whole. Now, when I taught my kids, I would go over the top and asking them questions like this. So I would continue on with how many ninths needed to make a whole, how many tenths, how many 15ths, how many 32nds, how many 101s. I tried to make the numbers really silly just to get my kids to laugh, but also to emphasize the pattern to make sure that my kids understood that they needed 3/3, 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, 101, 101s, that kind of thing. Now, the next three questions is having your child look a little bit more deeply into fractions, looking at the fraction chart. Now, these questions might not be as easy for your child. I remember adding a number of extra examples to help my kids understand the fractions and their relationships to one another a little bit better. So feel free to add questions at the end of this to continue working on the things that your child is struggling with. Look at the top of the second page of the lesson. The first sentence says this: tell the child to look away from the assembled fraction chart for the next two questions. And then you're going to ask, which is more, 1/6 or 1/3? And which is more, 1/2 or 1/3? This activity is going to help you see if your child is understanding the fractions or if they're just blindly answering the questions simply by looking at the chart. You're going to want to make sure your child is internalizing these concepts as they're learning. If your child cannot answer these questions, then you're going to want to ask more questions until your child understands the concept. For example, for that, working off of these first two questions, I might ask a question like, which one is larger, 1/4 or 1/2? And of course, my child is going to look at the chart and see 1/2 is larger than 1/4. But I'm going to say, but wait a minute, which number is larger, the 2 or the 4? The 2 in the 1/2 or the 4 in the 1/4? Help your child realize and see and understand that the larger the denominator is, the smaller the piece. So guide your child into the questions to help them see that. Now, the next set of questions in this lesson is not going to use the unit fraction. Now, if you don't know what a unit fraction is where there's a 1 in the denominator. Sample unit fractions are 1/2, 1/4, 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, 1/9, etc. Now, for these next questions, your child is going to look at the fraction chart to answer, and these questions are a little bit more complicated. Like, what is a bit larger, 3/6 or 1/3? Which is larger, 3/6 or 2/3? Feel free to add more questions to help your child get a little bit more comfortable with the fraction chart and how fractions work. Then you're going to give your child worksheet 38. If possible, have your child complete the worksheet on their own. Make sure to have your child read these instructions out loud if needed to help them know what they're going to be doing and give them the opportunity to ask questions before they start the worksheet. Now take a look at the section called Fractions of a Square. Here you're going to draw 2 squares and then have your child divide those squares in half 2 different ways. The first way they're going to use is a vertical line, and then the other, they're going to split it in half by using a diagonal line. Examples of that is shown at the bottom of the second page of the lesson manual. Then you're going to ask, which half is larger? Well, of course, neither is larger. They're both halves. However, your child might think that one looks larger than the other. So you might want to discuss how you're splitting the same shape in half. That half will be the same regardless of how that's split up. Then you're going to have your child split those squares again into fourths using a horizontal line this time. So you have a square with a vertical and a horizontal line, and then the other diagonal line. The answers or examples of that is shown at the bottom of the lesson, of the second page of the lesson. Now, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson, so make sure you pick a game to keep up on your child's math facts. Don't skip these games. Once we get back into arithmetic here in just several lessons, you're not going to want to be frustrated because your child has forgotten their math facts. It's not going to just frustrate you, though. Your child is also going to be frustrated, and you're going to have to take some time off and relearn those math facts. So make sure you're playing those math card games. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 70. Congratulations, you are halfway through level C. Now, you may want to celebrate this milestone with your child. This will be an encouragement for both of you to just keep on going. You're doing a great job. Now, this lesson is going to need crayons or colored pencils and extra paper, and these materials are not included in the math set. Now, lesson 70 is an enrichment lesson. Take a look at the explanation section in the first page of that lesson. It says, this is the first of several enrichment lessons designed to bring the world of math into everyday life. If necessary, because of time restraints, this lesson may be omitted without the loss of continuity. So if you are behind, this lesson can be skipped, although it is kind of a fun lesson. So if you need a break or your child needs a different kind of a thing to do, this is a great lesson to continue through. The first paragraph of the warm-up are basically asking questions about fractions. If your child is struggling with these, go ahead and let them use the fraction chart. If they still struggle, even using the fraction chart, you might want to go back and review lesson 69. Now, the second paragraph is asking questions about the fourths and quarters. We covered that material in lesson 66. So if your child needs the extra little review, you can go back to lesson 66 and review it. The third paragraph is talking about centimeters and perimeter. Centimeters was covered in lesson 68. And that fourth paragraph is talking about shapes and geometry terminology. Feel free to let your child use the math dictionary to help them learn and retain these terms if needed. All right, take a look at the section called Worksheet 39. Here you're going to give your child the worksheet and the drawing board. You can either have it already attached to the drawing board, or you can have your child attach the worksheet to the drawing board. Then you're going to have your child read the instructions and complete the worksheet. Before your child starts, let them know that the first step is to divide the triangles into fourths. For a review of how that's done, you can go back and look at lesson 66. Once your child completes the worksheet, you will then ask a list of questions listed at the bottom of the first page of the lesson under the heading Worksheet 39. Let me show you how this worksheet is to be completed. So for Worksheet 39, your child is going to divide the equilateral triangles in two different ways. Now, I've already started both equilateral triangles, and I've split up the equilateral triangles in four. That will be the first step. Now, if your child does not remember how to split up the equilateral into four different pieces, go ahead and take a look at lesson 66. So I'm going to work on this triangle here, and I'm only going to show you this portion because the other portions are just the same. So we're going to work on this smaller equilateral triangle, and the first step we're going to do is we're going to vertically split this triangle in half. Just like that. Whoops. Just like that. There we go. And then I'm going to tip it, the triangle, so that the 30 degree is resting on the T-square. And I'm going to line that up down here on this corner. And I'm going to line that up and then draw my line. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the opposite side. Now it's a little messy, but that's generally how it's done. Now for this triangle, it's actually just repeating the same thing you did here as what you did on the larger triangle. So we're going to split up each of these equilateral triangles into 4 equilateral triangles. So we're going to do the same thing as we've done before. We're going to find the center mark, write a tick, and then I'm going to draw these lines here. Oops. Flip my T-square over. And then I'm going to slide up my T-square and connect. And you'll just do that with the other 3 equilateral triangles. Now, take a look at the section called Original Design. If your child is creative, let them design their own split of the equilateral triangle. Now, if your child is not interested in doing that extra work, then just go ahead and have them color in the triangles. That was on worksheet 39. There is also not a math card game for this lesson, so you're going to want to pick a game to help keep up your child's math facts. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 71. If you purchased your worksheets prior to 2019, there is a correction for worksheet 40. So you're going to want to make that correction by looking at our corrections page and make that correction before getting started on this lesson. Now, the first 2 paragraphs of the warm-up section is reviewing fractions. Let your child use their fraction chart to answer the questions as needed. The last paragraph is reviewing perimeter. Now remember, perimeter means to measure around a shape. In this lesson, your child is going to be constructing a star. So let me walk you through the steps of how that is going to be done. So worksheet 40 is going to construct a star following these examples. So let's walk through those real quick. The first thing you're going to do is draw the horizontal line. And then you're going to use your 30-60 triangle to draw these diagonal lines. Then you're going to draw a complete vertical line, and you're going to just basically line that up with this center point here. So the next couple lines, you're going to be using the T-square or the 30-60 triangle in a little different way. You're going to use this longer side and rest that on the T-square. And we're going to connect these next lines, do these next lines. And we're going to line it up with our center point on our shape here. So we're just going to do that for this line. Then we're going to flip it over and do that for this line. Now we have all of our lines drawn. Now we're going to start forming our square or our star. So we're going to again continue to use our 30-60 triangle with the longer side, and we're going to start up here on this top right corner. We're going to line it up so that this corner, we're going to go from this corner to this center line, and then from this side to up here. We're going to do the same thing for this bottom section. We're going to start at this center line here. Line myself up here. Hold on. There we go. This line here and this line here. Then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to do the same thing, but starting up here at the top. I'm going to slide it down. Okay, and the last thing we have to do are our vertical lines. I'm just going to connect them. Oops, shift it here. And there you go. Now you have your star. Now this worksheet will be used in lesson 72, so you're going to want to keep it handy. There is also not a math card game listed for this lesson, so make sure you play a math card game that will keep up your child's math facts. Well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 72. This lesson, in this lesson, you're going to need the color tiles. Now, since it's been a little while since we've used them, that's these things. These are the colored tiles. And your child is also going to need the math journal. And the math journal is located in the back of the student worksheet book. Now, part of this lesson actually mirrors lesson 68, except that instead of using centimeters for measurements, this lesson is going to focus on inches. Now, the warm-up section will review fractions, so let your child use the fraction chart as needed. Take a look at the section called Worksheet 41. Here you're going to give your child the materials they're needing, including the worksheet, the drawing board, the 30-60 triangle, the T-square, the 4-in-1 ruler, and the tiles. Now you can go ahead and give your child the drawing board with the worksheet already taped on, or you can let your child tape on the worksheet themselves. Take a look at this section called Reviewing Inches. Here you're going to show your child the inch tile, like this, and you're going to tell them that each side is 1 inch in length. Then they are going to use these tiles to measure one of the lines in the hexagon in worksheet 41. Then your child will use the ruler to measure 3 tiles. So you're going to pull 3 tiles next to each other, and then use the 4-in-1 ruler, the inches side of the 4-in-1 ruler, and measure those 3 tiles. And they're going to find that 3 tiles measures 3 inches. Then your child is going to measure each side of the hexagon using the 4-in-1 ruler. Now take a look at this section called Writing Equations. Here, you're going to ask your child to add various measurements together. If needed, your child can reference their 4-in-1 ruler to solve. Be sure to provide enough problems for your child to be comfortable in solving problems just like these. I actually had to add probably 3 or 4 more just to kind of give you an idea. Then you're going to have your child consider using multiplication to solve these measurement problems. The first question is, you have 3 pieces, each measuring 6.5 inches. So how many inches are there? Now you're probably going to want to have to write that part down, 3 pieces of 6.5 inches down, if your child has a difficulty remembering things. Then your child is going to write the equation down and then solve it as a multiplication problem if they can. Have your child discuss how that problem can be solved. Now, if your child can multiply, they're going to do 6 times 3 to give them 18. And then they have 3 halves left. So they know 2 halves equal a whole. So we're going to take 18 to 19, and they're left with an additional half. So there would be a total of 19 and 1/2. Now, your child may not know their multiplication math facts enough to solve these problems using multiplication, and that's okay. Just let them add those numbers together 3 different times. So for example, that 6.5 inches, you would add 6 plus 6 plus 6, which gives you 18. And then you would have 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2, which gives you 1.5. So you're left with 19.5. Continue on those other 2 examples. You might even want to add some extra examples until your child gets the hang of how to solve these type of problems. Now, if you have an advanced student, kind of stretch their multiplication a little bit on this. Maybe make higher numbers, maybe multiply by 5 or 6 if your child is able to do that or able to figure it out. Take a look at this section called Drawing Another Star on the Hexagon. Let me show you how this is going to be drawn. So worksheet 41 starts off the same as with worksheet 40. So I'm going to draw all these first lines out for you. Okay, now that you have all of these lines drawn, now we're going to start making our connecting lines. So we're going to start right here. We're going to draw these lines here, these little part lines that's going to make the points of our star. And then we're going to get our 30/60 out, and we're going to line it up. And flip this one. We're going to do our bottom point. Oops. Overdid that one. And then we're going to finish our side points. And there is our star. towards the bottom of the second page of the lesson, you're going to have your child compare the star that they drew in this lesson with the star that they drew in lesson 71. Both stars will be used in future lessons, so make sure you keep both these worksheets handy. Now, there is not a math card game listed for this lesson, so you're going to want to pick a game to keep up your child's math facts. Well, that's it for the week. If you have any questions or concerns at all about a lesson, or if your child is struggling with something, give us a call or email us. We're here to help you. I look forward to seeing you next week as we cover lessons 73 to 76. Have a great week, everybody.